You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, sponsored by Essentia Health.
It only takes one step, twist, or crunch to know something doesn't feel right. Essentia Health's orthopedic and sports medicine team gets you back to doing what you love with commitment, resilience, intention. We're here to keep you moving forward. Visit essentiahealth.org to learn more about orthopedics and sports medicine, like nowhere else.
Hello and welcome to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health. I'm Matt Wellens, the Bulldogs hockey beat writer at the Duluth News Tribune and the Rink Live.
And I'm Zach Schneider, the television voice of UMD Hockey on My9 Sports.
This week on the podcast, we're joined by a former Bulldog who's back in the United States this season, and even better, she's back in Minnesota to play pro hockey after spending some time in Europe. She's also one of the new captains of the Minnesota Whitecaps. You joining us on the podcast this week, Sid Morin. Sid, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you guys?
It's good. When I say a former Bulldog who's a captain of the Whitecaps, that's like saying a captain of the Whitecaps named Sidney this year. It's you. You're wearing the A for the Whitecaps this year. Former UMD teammate Sidney Brodt, who I joked on Twitter, and I'll keep this joke going forever, that she was captain of the Bulldogs for 10 seasons. She's wearing the C now, 3 seasons in UMD, realistically. She's wearing the C for the Whitecaps. You have another Sid Baldwin on the team that's also assistant captain. Just the first little icebreaker here. 3 Sids all wearing letters. You got to have nicknames for each other to avoid confusion during practice and games, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've played with Sid Baldwin since we grew up together playing at Minnetonka. So I've known her since I was like 10 years old, and we always called her Baldy. But she was also the only Sid playing for the Gophers for a long time. So her Sid nickname came back. So there is still people calling her Sid, but I'm on the Baldy train. I call Sid Brodt. Full name.
What's your nickname?
I don't know if I really have one. People just call me Sid. Like girls who are older than me at Duluth, like Emma Stauber or Brick, like they'll call me Siddy because they just remember me when I was 18 years old and bring a little kid name in. So other than that, like there's not really much.
Baldy's a good nickname. I'm surprised that hasn't stuck with the entire team. Zach,
Yeah.
How did you used to handle it on TV when there was Sid Morin and Sid Brodt?
We went full name on TV.
Full name. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's easier because their last names are different. So TV, for us, it's brothers and sisters and triplets and all that stuff that gets really confusing when we had the Andersons and the Cates and whatnot here. But yeah, is Sid Baldwin a forward or a defenseman?
She's a defenseman.
Are you two paired together? Because that's where it would get really confusing.
No, not yet, at least.
Okay, so that would start making it confusing if you were both out there a lot at the same time.
So Sid Morin, as we mentioned, you were in Europe for 5 seasons, 4 in Sweden, which was a very popular league at one time for former Bulldogs, especially not just Europeans, but everyone. And then last year in Switzerland, 49 or more points the last 3 seasons. You were really racking up points over there in Europe. You're part of a flood of players who are playing in Europe and have come back this year. It's both Americans and Europeans. They've come back to the U.S. to play in the Premier Hockey Federation, previously known as the National Women's Hockey League. For you, why come back to the U.S. and what was so enticing about the PHF?
Yeah, I mean, I loved my time in Europe for sure. Like I always said, like, what happened to me at the 2018 Olympics wasn't going to change like who I am or what I was going to do. So I decided to keep playing in Europe and just enjoying that life and lifestyle, whatnot. But yeah, I was actually visiting my parents last year, like over the Olympic break, and we were watching a couple games of the PHF, some of my friends that were still playing in it, and just saw the news about the large investment coming in, and actually being able to make a living wage playing hockey over here in America. So it kind of turned my head a little bit. And probably one of the first conversations I actually had was with Laura Bellamy. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think it's worth it, kind of thing? Like, just because I'd been gone for so long and not paid that much attention to what was going on. So I decided to have some conversations with the owner that owns both the Whitecaps and the Buttes. He's on the board of governors for the league, and just got to know a little bit more about their vision and just how it works and what's going to change in this upcoming season. And it turned my head, and just continued to have conversations with different coaches leading up to the summer, and ultimately decided to make the jump. And I think a lot of other players followed. There's a lot of people, like you said, that are returning to America and want to play in this league. And I think the best is yet to come for sure.
This is your first year back in the league. You mentioned that the livable wage that is being paid now for pro hockey, women's pro hockey players in North America is enticing. What other changes were sold to you about the league that made it maybe more than just a money thing? Because it seemed like it, and I know it's Instagram, but it seemed like on Instagram you were living pretty sweet life over there in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, just obviously having health care is a huge thing that they didn't have before. It seems like not that big of a deal, but it really is when you think about it. Just the professionality that comes with it too, like adding another league, adding more games, the Whitecaps getting our own rink, our own locker room, all those types of, like a shower facility, laundry facilities, all things that like you overlook in the past that they didn't have before, all like things that actually matter to your, like your daily life and your just enjoyment of going to the rink every day. So I think that is a big thing. And just, there have like just workers' compensation and just a bunch of small things that are in the contract that people don't think about are actually a big deal.
It's great for players like you who are going through this right now, who get the chance to come back and play in the States if that's where you want to be. But how important do you think this changeover is going to be for younger girls who are maybe just getting started playing or maybe haven't started playing? But, for young boys, they get to go to UMD games and be inspired that way, but they also get to go to Minnesota Wild games or other professional games. I mean, to see some of the players like you and other best players come back to the States, how impactful do you think that's going to be as we move forward, that there will be professional hockey at a very high level that maybe some young girls can go watch?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And like I said, it's awesome that we actually have our own rink and facility that is branded towards us as well. Like when the Whitecaps were at Tria, obviously everybody knew it as the Wild's practice facility versus the Whitecaps home rink. So now at Richfield, we kind of have that brand name, and we're going to have lots of people at our game. I think it's about 1,500 people can fit in the building, close to the ice, get just a different feel for the game. It's going to be loud, and it's going to basically feel like you're sitting right on the ice. So I think we've already, our team has done a great job. Our staff and players have done a great job getting out into the community already and trying to make a difference and just showing that we're here and we're here to stay. And we want to get people involved as much as we can. So I think it'll be great to have little girls or little boys at the game. I'm sure you've seen a comment from Sarah Nurse just being on the cover of NHL, how she's just been inspired that like little boys are the one recognizing her. She expected little girls too, but it's also little boys. And, it's pretty cool just in a sense that you can make a difference. It doesn't matter if it's a boy or girl, and just get as many little hockey players out there as we can.
I have a 4-year-old son, Jack, and he loves going to UMD women's hockey games. And for a 4-year-old, it's a great environment. I think it's not as the games don't conflict with his nap time or his bedtime like those men's games, those 7:00 starts. But no, it's a fun atmosphere. He loves the hockey. He really gets into it and such. And people talk about, oh, this is great for, young women, young girls. And it is, it's cool and important for them to have those role models. But I think it's just cool in general for kids to be able to see and recognize. I mean, we watched you, Sid, win win a gold medal on NBC. And we see these tremendous female hockey players, doing great things in the Olympics. It's important that people also get a chance to watch these tremendous. And I think this can be said about soccer and a lot of women's pro sports. There needs to be a place for these athletes to shine and grow fan bases and get exposure, stateside and year round, not just every 4 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's been a message that's been relayed for as long as I've been in my adult life. And, all these players are really trying to make a difference and get people's attention. Like you said, not every 4 years, but every single year, because we are always playing, doesn't matter where. But I mean, I think that's a huge part of this. The PHF too, just being on ESPN is going to be huge. People can flip on the TV, even if they're planning to watch an NHL game later that night. And then they're like, oh, there's, a women's game going on. And they click on that and watch that. And that's just the start.
It's been an entire Olympic cycle since your gold medal win in 2018. Do you still talk to that group? Because you were a pretty big driving force, that team, in this start of this serious conversation. The U.S. women's soccer team was also pretty big in the early going. But that 2018 Olympic women's hockey team, really helped move the needle towards where we are today. Do you as a group still talk about that, about how tough it was to do what you guys did in that Olympic cycle and then go win a gold medal at the same time?
Yeah, I think so. I still have talked to a few girls on the team and have friends on the team, but I think it was almost like just such a whirlwind at the time that you don't really realize what's happening until after it happens, kind of thing. So I think like the wave across the world of, what happened there, you could see with Team Sweden went on a strike in 2019 to get just to have their salary from their jobs paid for while they're at camp, so they're not losing money and getting health insurance covered if anything happens to them at their camp. So I think that obviously was something that I saw firsthand, that was a result of what Team USA did in 2017, 2018. So I think that it really is a staple for teams and girls across the world, because I've played with so many girls from other countries and they're in awe of what Team USA and Team Canada, get, or how they're supported to live and train. And that's what they want for their federations. And it's just a matter of time until they all get there.
What was it like? You mentioned Sweden. We heard so many things about how great that pro league was. And then it was always interesting that their national team wasn't supported, but the professional leagues and whether it's Sweden or you were also in Switzerland, what are those like? What, not just the environment and the hockey, but what's, from a financial and support perspective, what was it like playing over there in the European leagues? Why were those maybe more enticing to players like you and a lot of, women's hockey players, prior to what the PHF has done this year?
Yeah, I think the Swedish league has honestly only grown. The very first season, Michaela Kava and I went over there and played in Modo. And it was the first year that team actually brought in foreigners or imports, they say. And they didn't really want to do that in the past because they wanted to develop their Swedish girls and make them. So that's kind of been their new problem in Sweden, is that almost too many imports have gone over into that league, and it's hurt the development of their own players. Because if all the imports are getting power play PK time, then what happens when those Swedish girls go to a camp and now they're on the power play or penalty kill and they don't have the experience in a sense. So it's something that they're working through now, maybe putting a limit on it in the next couple of years. But honestly, it's just gotten better and more. I mean, all the teams in Sweden are supported by a bigger club, potentially a men's team in the highest league or the second highest league, and they're really investing in women's hockey across the board. There's a bunch of teams in the lower league in Sweden this year that their men's clubs have invested a ton of money to try to get them to go up and move up in the next league in Sweden. So honestly, they're probably the most equal country for women and men's sports that you can get in regards to just treatment. You're not going to get passed by a junior team. A boys junior team isn't going to get like more respect than the women's team. It goes the highest men's team, then women's league, and then it trickles down. So I think they're doing a lot of really good things over there, and that's why people keep wanting to go. Switzerland was a little different. They don't necessarily have the support of the men's clubs there, so they're lacking a lot more money, and and just players in general. They do have an import rule, so you can only have 4 imports per team there because they want to develop their Swiss players, and they want their Swiss players to get as much ice time as possible there. But it's a work in progress for sure. I think that they're probably still 10 years behind Sweden, but it was an experience for sure.
I was going to say Switzerland's best player, Lara Stalder, over there playing in Sweden.
Yeah.
And, it's not just North Americans. Katarina Mrzova, was playing in Sweden as well from Czechia. There is another, I don't know if we call it a league, but an option for women's pro hockey players in North America with the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association and their tour. Sid, what are still the major differences between the PWHPA and PHF, and what's it maybe going to take to bridge the gap and bring, all of the top players, I don't want to say in the world, but maybe at least in North America, all the top players, into one North American league and unify that?
Yeah, so the PWHPA is still doing showcases where they'll pick a spot and they'll go there and play on a mixed group team between Canadians and Americans. And they'll play a few games over the course of a weekend. And then they might do, I don't know how, I think maybe they have 4 or 5 of those weekends planned so far this year. And then the PHF is, a normal, comparable to college schedule. You're going to play every team 4 times, 2 home, 2 away. You're going to train and practice with your group and then play games versus the PWHPA. They're practicing maybe in a Minnesota group, but then when they go to the games, they're split up onto different teams. I don't know where they're at with their talks of, next steps. Obviously, they want to have a viable league as well, like the PHF, but we'll see what happens. I don't know too much about what they're at and what people say, but for now, that's the way it is.
You mentioned over in Sweden that they have this relationship with a larger club, partnering with a women's club. I've seen, promo stuff follow all you guys when you're in Europe. Instagram's a great way to follow former women's hockey players in Europe. Cool photos of life over there. And then I found it a good way to keep up with teams, so you have that relationship between the men's and women's programs. Does that relationship, you feel, need to happen here in the US? Does the NHL need to get involved? Do you need to have that men's and women's relationship, you feel like, for women's pro hockey to grow? Or could a women's hockey league, go on its own? Maybe it doesn't need the NHL?
I mean, I think it would help for sure. I mean, just to mix fan bases as well. I mean, I think a lot of fans that watch men's leagues, they don't really know what they're missing in a sense. They kind of they just jump ship and they whatever. But I think it would be important, just in a sense, if you could have a small partnership, at least get the word out, try to grow the fan base, because you kind of just have to teach a lot of people that, it's not worse. It's just different. A lot of people are impressed, some people not, but, a lot of people do get impressed with the women's game, and there's just a little bit more finesse to it versus the big hits and the physicality that there is in men's hockey. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I know the NHL has been struggling a little bit the last few seasons, just not having people in the buildings and, potentially losing some money. So it's been hard for them to back one of the leagues. And, the PHF isn't necessarily looking for them to take over in a sense, but it would be nice and, to have a small partnership and support one another and grow fan bases and just get more people to learn about the game.
How much are the steps that you're already taking in the PHF, though, maybe more valuable than even the support of the NHL, because you're getting some of the best players on the ice together for practices. They get to play together and against one another in games. I said to Emma Stauber this past weekend when we did the UMD women's games against Wisconsin on Friday and Saturday, I could watch those two teams play against each other every weekend of the winter and be super happy, because they're both top tier, college hockey teams. and they play such an entertaining style. But now, instead of the showcase where you don't get to practice a lot together and you don't generate that team following, now the PHF, I think that's a huge step in the right direction. Do you agree in terms of putting the product on the ice that people, if they come to the game and they're actually fans of hockey, are going to look at it and say, hey, this is pretty entertaining when you get the best players on the ice like we have in the NHL, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that was, their biggest thing about investing all the money they did last season. They've had the infrastructure, they were on ESPN last season as well. And, they have all these great ticketing platforms, apparel sites, they have everything set up to be successful. The only thing that they were missing was the best players. So they're like, what can we do to get the best players to come? And, it honestly comes down to a living wage. That's what the good players want. They want to be able to live at least comfortably and play the game they love. So that's why they put all this money in. And I mean, you can see, myself included, it's kind of what made me turn my head and decide to come back. So, and I'm not the only one. There's plenty of people that have decided to come play in the league. And I think it's honestly only going to continue to get better and, more competitive in the future.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more with Sid Morin, and also joining us is another Whitecaps teammate. We're going to make this more confusing and add another Sid to the podcast. You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health.
Hey there, my name is Wyatt Buckner, and I'm the host of the Duluth News Tribune Minute Podcast. Hear the most important news of the day, including weather and sports from Duluth, Minnesota, and from around the Northland. Join me and my fellow reporters as we take you through the local news you need to start your day. Episodes are released Monday through Friday and are available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for supporting local journalism.
Hi, I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Explore Superior and Douglas County history with me on Archive Dive, a monthly podcast available at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health, Orthopedics, and Sports Medicine. They're proud to be the team physicians for the UMD Bulldogs and provide sports medicine care to more than 25,000 student athletes in the community to ensure they can compete at the highest level while protecting their long-term health and athletic futures. Thank you to Essentia Health for their support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. I'm Matt Wellens, your host, joined by my co-host, Zach Schneider. Sid Morin is with us, and also joining us fashionably late to the podcast, Sid Brodt.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You're busy. You're coaching. You said you were coaching this morning. What's the team? Who are you coaching?
Yeah, so I'm helping coach Hamlin, their women's hockey team. It's a D3 school in the cities, so I've been having a lot of fun with them, and it's been awesome.
And we're going to go with, as we discussed earlier in the podcast, we're going to party like it's the 2016-17 season and awkwardly use full names here. Sid Brodt, we were talking about the differences between the PHF and the PWHPA. Man, I'm sorry if I butcher all the acronyms here. It took me a while just to get PHF down. I kept wanting to throw an A in there and such. Sid Brodt, you were part of the Players Association league your first year out of college.
Yeah.
What was it like for you playing in there, and why, as you're coming back to the US after a year of playing in Sweden, why was the Premier Hockey Federation more enticing than the Players Association?
Yeah, I had a good year that first year. It was obviously tough with COVID that year, and then I decided to go overseas. And then coming back, I think the PHF kind of had a new model and money involved and lots of good players joining the league. And I just thought it was a great opportunity. And I really think the biggest thing for me was being able to be part of a team again, like a close-knit group that was working together to win a championship. And I really think that's what's happening in the PHF this year. So that's really what drew me towards it.
For you, what was that, Sid Brodt, what was that year like in Sweden? And what was the major, enticing factor? Was it, we were talking to Sid Morin about the livable wage that the PHF is now offering, professional women's hockey players. What was the big thing that brought you back to the U.S. after a year in Europe?
Yeah, I honestly think it was the same thing alongside, like, I guess there's no place like home. It was nice to be away and experience new things, but I think the livable wage just was huge. And then alongside that, just being a part of a team, I knew the Whitecaps were recruiting a lot of good players, and that was something I wanted to be a part of.
I think we've talked to Sid Morin about this for the past 4 years, and we talked in the first half of the podcast that she was part of that initial group in the Olympic cycle of 2018 that helped move the needle forward for women's hockey. And obviously, there's been a lot of movement over the last 4 or 5 years, and still space left to grow. But Sid Brodt, how have you experienced that? Because you were in college during a lot of that, all of that 2018 cycle, and a lot of this conversation that's happened around the women's game. But now you're out and you're kind of part of it. I think there's a lot of people, maybe the two of you included, that wish you didn't have to be social activists at the same time that you were, being professional hockey players. But what's that experience been like over the last couple of years to kind of be out of college and join in, what's been hopefully a forward movement for the sport?
Yeah, no, I think obviously, like you said, like the girls that were a few years older than me, and then even girls like 10 years older than me, a part of that Olympic team, like they really push things forward for us. And really that's all, like, I think everyone's trying to do in women's hockey, like whether you're a part of a league in Sweden, like the PWHPA or the PHF, like everyone's really just trying to continue to make women's hockey grow and give us better opportunities to play full time. So yeah, I just think it's been cool to see, like, even when I graduated, there wasn't, which was like, well, I guess 3 years ago now, there wasn't really an opportunity to get a good living wage. And now, like 2 years later, here we are and we have that. So I think it's moving super quickly, and it's really great to see.
You talk about there's the living wage, but I mean, there's still room to grow for the PHF, right? Sid Brodt, you're coaching at Hamlin. Sid Morin, you're a scout with the NHL's Carolina Hurricanes. What's it going to take to get to a point where, and this would be a tough decision, I feel like, for Sid Morin, where you have to decide between being an NHL scout and a professional women's hockey player? What's it going to take to get to that point? And is that maybe where we need to get to for the Players Association and the PHF to come together?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Like, honestly, I would love to be like, have that decision. Like I can't wait for the day that were to happen. I think this year in the PHF is going to be super telling, just how it goes, the competition. Are we going to turn more investors' heads? What's going to come down to that? Like, ultimately what we want is a full schedule. We want to play games, as much games as we can. And we want to practice, 4 times a week and play 2 games. That's where we want to get to and have a full schedule. So like I said, I really think this year is going to be super telling. And then I think, the best is yet to come. Like, it's only going to get better and better as time goes on. If you talk to people who played in the former NWHL 3 years ago, like they can't believe where the league is now, the PHF. So I think that's awesome. Like, I'm super happy for the people who came before us, like Sid said, and kind of paved the way and open this door for more opportunity. And just the more talent we get, the better it's going to get.
How is the other side of that been, Sid Morin, the scouting side of it? Because I think when Sid Brodt talks about coaching in college, we've seen those doors open for women, especially in the women's sports. They're opening a little bit more on the men's side of things, whether it's coaching or doing analytics. But scouting, refereeing on the NHL side, on the men's side, as that door has been opening across all professional sports, maybe slowly, but what's your experience been like, getting into the NHL door and working with the people you work with on that side of things?
Yeah, honestly, I had no idea like what was going to happen or what was going to come of it when I, kind of put my name in the hat, and we did like some exercises and just, they wanted to see my style, what I saw in games and, how I could communicate it on certain players. And it's something I'd never done before, but I think new perspective isn't, it can be a good thing. And I think that's kind of what they saw with the way I broke down film. Certain men will always see the game a certain way. And like I said earlier, just the women's game has a little bit more finesse to it and just a little bit more thought out in a sense, because you do have that extra split second of time versus bracing for a hit. So the things that I saw in the game maybe were a little bit different than some others. And I think that that's something that they liked. The Hurricanes actually hired myself and another woman to join their group. So now we're almost half and half in our group. We'll get there, but I think it's awesome to see more women get hired in the NHL, because I think that like we do add value and a different perspective to, what they've had in the past.
Sid Brodt, how's your perspective changed a little bit on the game now in the coaching side?
Yeah, it has been different. I think it's been nice. I guess I'll just assume this, but I think it's nice for the players to have a coach that's still playing, me and then another Whitecaps players helping out. And I guess I have a lot of respect for them. Like, I don't know, if they make a mistake, I'm not just going to be like, what are you doing there? Or like whatever, because I know like things are happening a lot quicker on the ice than they are like up in the stands or in video. So I think that's been nice. But I can also I definitely have a lot of respect for coaches and what they do. Like, it's a super hard job, and making those decisions and for players it's not easy. So definitely fun to see it from a different point of view.
All right, we're running out of time on the podcast here. Whitecap season gets underway this weekend. You guys head to Toronto to take on the Toronto Six Saturday and Sunday. Home openers are November 18th and 19th at the Richfield Ice Arena, hosting the Boston Pride. Sid, Morin, and Sid Brodt, what should people expect from the Whitecaps this season, which we had plenty of Bulldogs to choose from to potentially be on this podcast. Former Bulldogs Emma Stauber, Ashley Bricklick, and Anna Klein also on this year's squad. What should we expect from the Whitecaps this year?
I'll take the offensive side. You take the defensive side. Okay, I think offensively we have a lot of talent and a lot of new players. So I'm just looking forward to building chemistry and just being able to play with new people a lot. Like, as you said, also with old teammates as well. I think will be fun. Yeah,
I'll just add to that. I think that, like Sid said, we're going to bring a lot of speed to the game. We have a lot of really good skaters on our team. So it's going to be a fast game, people who are gritty, willing to score and do their job. I think we're going to have great goaltending with Amanda Levier in net, former Gopher, and just a lot of offensive defensemen as well, like defensive players that want to get up in the rush. They want to shoot the puck and score a goal. So it'll be fun to get things started. Like Sid said, we have pretty much a brand new team. I think 2/3 of the team is new. So might take us a little time to get used to one another, but we're really looking forward to getting things going and playing some real games here.
All right. That is all the time we have. Go check out the Whitecaps. A lot of WCHA flair on that team, which it'll be fun. I think the dream of everyone in Minnesota would be if the Wild could get all the top Minnesotans to play for them. That hasn't happened or can't happen, I guess, maybe with the way the NHL works, but it's cool to see the Whitecaps bring so many Minnesotans and especially Bulldogs back stateside here this weekend. Sid Morin and Sid Brodt, thanks for joining us on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
The Bulldog Insider Podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe and rate us. For more Bulldogs hockey coverage, visit therinklive.com and DuluthNewsTribune.com. Zach, I don't think there's any Bulldog hockey on TV this weekend, but what's ahead?
Well, you that's wrong, not me.
There we go.
We got Friday night's men's game against Colorado College. I think it was a late addition to our schedule. So 8:30 Friday, you can watch the UMD men against Colorado College. That's the only TV game as the men open up their NCHC season, and then the women are on the road against Minnesota in the third straight weekend of their WCHA gauntlet, but no TV other than that Friday night men's game.
Yeah, go to Ritter Arena. Go check out some Bulldogs Gophers hockey. Those games are never boring. So there's always some intrigue in those. Go check those out. Thanks again to our guests, Sid Morin and Sid Brodt, for joining us on the podcast this week. Thanks to our sponsor, Essentia Health, for their continued support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll catch you next week.